was a wifely prompt, and you heard it.
Kathy's the serious one of this dynamic duo, so, you know, if she pulls or pokes or she just kind of barges in and takes over, it's because I've gotten out of line again somehow. I saw a quote that said, if you haven't grown up by the time you're 65, you don't have to. So I'm almost 70. So
And I'm continually telling him, act your shoes, or act your age, not your shoe size.
yeah.
It doesn't work.
So we've had an interesting life, and we're going to share a few things. I'll give you a little background, and we'll get to the part where we're going to show some slides where we had this ministry up in Watford City, where Adrian was. So on my intro, because I'm such a serious guy, I said I have a simple beginning, the story of Dick and Jane and Spot. And we've changed the names to protect the innocent, which would be Dick and Jane. Okay. So we're a story of a couple who met and dated and married, but had no clue where we'd be 48 and a half years later, which is now. We've been married 48 and a half years. That includes you, so you know, don't just sit there on the stool and look pretty. Would like to share a journey, kind of like a Bible story, stories of successes and pain and joy and hard work and unexpected turns and lots of God's grace and supernatural interventions and guidance. And then hopefully through that there'll be some nuggets of wisdom and insight that will encourage you and help you navigate your future and your walk with God. There's a couple core verses that I'd like to read as we begin that have really been a part of how we have wanted to live. The first one is in Galatians chapter 6, verse 2. It says, by helping each other with your troubles, you truly obey the law of Christ. And then going over to verse 9, we must not become tired of doing good. We will receive our harvest of eternal life at the right time if we do not give up. When we have the opportunity to help anyone, we should do it. But we should give special attention to those that are in the family of God. And then over in 1 John 3, verses 16 through 18, this is how we know what real love is. Jesus gave his life for us, so we should give our lives for our brothers and sisters. Suppose someone has enough to live and sees a brother or sister in need but does not help, then God's love is not living in that person. My children, we should love people not only with words and talk, but by our actions and true caring. And throughout the story of our life, as we've navigated to this point, there have been times where we've been on both ends. We've been the ones needing help, and we've been the ones giving help. And different ones in the body of Christ have stepped up at times, and there's times where we've been able to do special outreach. Kathy's a North Dakota farm girl, and I came from St. Cloud, Minnesota, and we met at Trinity Bible College in North Dakota. And just because I don't follow the scripted book, we didn't finish college. We joined a gospel quartet in Bemidji, Minnesota, so I could go travel on a bus and leave her behind, wondering what happened to my new man. I mean, this was like 2 months after we were married.
And that was tough.
It was.
It was. I mean, I'd cry every time he left. And then eventually...
Not with joy to see me go.
And then eventually I didn't cry anymore. I was like, okay, good. Head out. Can some of you women identify with that?
So for about 3 years, I traveled on the bus, and the tours got longer, and the days at home fewer as trying financially to make it. And it did get harder to leave until finally we decided this isn't any way to live as a married couple. So in our brilliance, we started our own group. Kathy and I and another couple we called Love Edified, and we bought a couple mini homes, and away we went. And we traveled throughout the Midwest, and in the wintertime we'd go south and then over and up the West Coast, get back home about Easter. It was a great plan, except we forgot to tell the churches the offerings had to be more than $25. Because you can't fill too many homes and pay your insurance and do the food and all that stuff on that kind of money. And so after 3 years of that, we decided that wasn't working either. And so we ended up back in St. Cloud wondering what in the world is going on. But during those traveling years, we had met an evangelist out of Sisseton, Lowell Lundstrom. We sang at some of his crusades when we were in the quartet, and even as our group Love Edified. And so through running into him, quote unquote, you have to sometimes look back and see how, things that you think are just coincidences are actually God's nudging, you in the right directions to make things work. I mean, I was going to go, my mom wanted me to go to Bible college in Minneapolis because that's where she went, and I thought, no, because then it'll just be all comparisons. Well, I did this, and so you shouldn't. So I go to North Dakota thinking I'd made my own decision. But I go to North Dakota, and I meet her, who wanted to go to the conservative... Yeah, see, I knew I could get you to say something if I stumbled along back enough. Yeah, so she was going to go there. Well, her dad thought it would be really good for her to get a year at Bible college, being a farm girl, and not, really wear stuff. Maybe a year at Bible college would help.
Yeah.
And then here we are. So, yay God is all I can say about that. So we moved to Sisseton in 79, worked for Lowell for 10 years, started out as the maintenance guy's helper, and then I worked on the radio broadcast, and then record projects, and then the office manager, and then the general manager the last few years. And then through connections we made there, ended up moving to Texas, and worked for a group called the Power Team. They were a bunch of young power lifters. They'd go do high school auditoriums in big places, and they'd break handcuffs and roll up frying pans and tear phone books and stuff, and then it was quite the operation. And then they'd talk about Jesus and talk about what being a real man or woman of God was. It was a great show. The problem was the kids didn't bring money to pay for this, So the grandparents sometimes would come and buy T-shirts, but so financially it was a mess. After about a year of that, I was sitting in the closet at our house in the dark and wouldn't come out. I was that close to snapping just from the financial pressure. And there weren't cell phones back then, so when the group took off and I said, yep, I'm going to call so-and-so and you'll have it checked by such and such, and it didn't show up. And I was the guy sitting by the telephones. When the creditors called in and needed money, I was the one that had to talk to them. And that was rough. That was really, really a rough time. But there was a pastor friend that prayed with us and walked beside us, and so we got through that. Well, then we went back to Sisseton for 6 months, just kind of licking our wounds and wondering what's next. And I helped shingle and did some painting, and then one of my friends, I don't know if he thought he was helping, said, "Well, what do you feel about making that big goof up?" That was kind of his answer. Well, that really helped,
It was a growing experience for us, but he went in, and he had hired some people, I believe, and really it was house cleaning. It was kind of like Jesus going
down in Texas.
Yeah, going into the temple and saying, "Hey, you've made this not right. This is my house of prayer." And so going into this ministry, it really was type of a house cleaning. Somebody that was naive, didn't know what the truth was, ended up finding out what the truth was, and did some house cleaning.
Yeah, so it did bring about some major changes. Pertinent erect me, though.
It did. When he was sitting in the closet, what do you think I was thinking? I don't know how to help you.
What would I have to offer you to come out of there? Then we moved back to Sisseton. We were there 6 months doing, all over. And then we ended up moving back to Texas again. We got a call from another ministry. They were looking for a general manager, and that ended up being kind of a reorganization. The general manager and his wife had just up and left, and they had no operations man. It was a mess. That's the easiest way to put it. So we were there almost 3 years, and made a lot of changes. Matter of fact, it was so goofed up that the fellow that was evangelist didn't even want to go into his own office because it felt so yucky. So he did most of his stuff from home. I mean, that's, and it was just a matter of, finding out where the bad apples were, and working with the departments and giving leadership and giving them a voice, and what they saw and how they thought things should be run, and then writing out an operations manual so that when we left, whoever came in after us actually had a clue how things were supposed to be. They had a bell system for, I'm kind of getting off tangent here.
You are. Bunny trail.
They had a bell system, so when it was like 5 o'clock and the bell rang, within 30 seconds the building was empty. Nobody hung around to talk to anybody. They're just gone. And toward the end, we were having picnics, and people, could you go so we can lock up? And the evangelist fella came in, and he'd stop over at our house and hang out. So in spite of all that stuff, God used us to bring encouragement and to kind of say, hey, there's another way of doing things, So then after that, we moved back to Sisseton, where I was going to start a ministry with a pastor friend. He was going to do evangelistic work, and I was going to do music. And because I'd worked with nonprofits to set up a 501c3, and it ended up that the church blew up into a split, and then there was all kinds of heartache and just a horrid mess. And we're going, what in the world? So, I did everything. I worked for Pizza Hut and State Farm and for a telemarketing place. I right back doing just all, do what you got to do to pay the bills. And then saying, God, where are you? And what didn't we hear? What didn't we do? Somebody gave us this house. They said if we wanted to fix it up, we could live in it for free. It was out in the country. Well, we didn't realize how wretched the thing was.
We had to chase the coons out.
It had 18 water line breaks. They must not have shut the water off, whoever was there last. And there was water and mud in the basement because water came in, and the electricity had been shut off, so there was no sump pump working. And the roof over the porch had rotted so bad there's a hole and birds are flying in and out of there. And we put a new roof, and it had back plastered walls. For those of you old enough to know, there's no insulation in there. We couldn't heat that stupid thing with fuel oil. It was an outside fuel oil barrel, so you had to burn number one. So then we cut wood, and we'd hauled it down down the basement. We eventually learned we could throw some in the basement window, and I'd get up in the middle of the night and stoke the dumb thing, and if it got down too far, I'd have to stay up long enough for the thing to settle in so you didn't burn the place down. And that was where the Wrath of Cath came in, wasn't it, on that?
Oh, yeah, the Wrath
on that,
of
where
Cath.
you took the, we termed the term a Wrath of Cath because she took a vacuum cleaner and beat the snot out of it.
Yes, I was very frustrated at life.
You even
at
took
the
off
moment.
once, didn't you? One time, did
Only
you?
just to go drive around the country and simmer down.
Oh,
Because, you come back from a land of plenty to a desert. And there were just some things that I didn't have the best attitude about. But, that place became quite the haven. And our kids to this day, they're in their 40s and 30s, and they still talk about the wonderful times that we had back then. So in spite of the horrendous work that we had to do to make it a home, it's not about the building. It was about the attitude, and we're going to make a home out of this, and we did.
and it makes you tough.
It makes you tough. Makes you appreciate when you have plenty.
Yes.
And it makes you appreciate when you don't have a lot and somebody offers you something. It's like...
Oh, yeah, and during that time, we had somebody gave us a car, the one we had had
We lived...
died.
Actually, before we moved into that house, we lived in
Where the
a
church
thrift
is.
store.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which is
so
now
we
the
had-
church we go to.
So we had box walls, and, you can put up curtains. The person who owned it, he put a shower in for us. So, it was like camping. That's what the kids thought.
It
So,
was something.
You know,
It
there are
was
just
something.
things you learn to adjust your attitude. I once heard this little story about this grandma, or somebody was being transferred into a care center. She walks into the room, and she just walks around, and she kind of looks, and she says, "This will be just fine." And somebody was saying, "Well, how can this be just fine when you've had so much?" And she just said, "This will be just fine. This is my new home." So it's all about attitude.
Yes, it is.
That's what I've learned over the years.
So then we ended up helping to start this new church called Christian Outreach Center.
What time do we need to be done? Because he may need to.
We may need to make this into 2 sessions.
Well, I'm
10 to?
okay. All right. So we're doing good. Sort
You
of.
are?
Sort
You're
of.
going to go through that in 10 minutes? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, so we helped start this new church, Christian Outreach Center. And as it turns out, our pastor, our son-in-law and daughter are the pastors of the church now. And so after we did all our running around, and we ended up back in Sisseton, so we help with worship, and I'm on the church board, and it's a church we helped start many years ago, and God's just using in the community. Anyway, so we ended up in Watford City. I'll jump ahead a little bit, where a lot of the things we learned and the toughness and the God's with us through everything made us not afraid to go and start something totally new when there was nothing there whatsoever. So I'm going to show some slides here, and I'll talk a little bit about some. Oh, I got the thing in my pocket.
Yes, you do.
Were you going to holler at me and say, you got the flipper, kid? Huh? And it's on. Okay. Wow. Technology is my friend. Mobile thrift store. Okay, so we moved there. We're going to start this new ministry, and well, hot diggity, you know, and the Methodists took an offering to start it. They were hoping for 100,000, and it was 250,000, and so everybody's going, yay, God, and we get up there. There was no building to be had. The only building available was an old grocery store on Main Street for $1 million. So we bought a toy hauler travel trailer. You know what a toy hauler is? You can put the back down and put stuff in there. And we converted it into a thrift store. All right, what am I doing here? And then we used storage sheds. At one time we had 5 just piled full of stuff. And then we rented the Presbyterian church, so we had somewhere to sort the stuff. And we'd haul it in and out and in and out. And then we would do giveaways. We'd pile this stuff up, and then people would come in, and they'd pick through the stuff. And back in the day, it was all free. We gave it away all for free because we had money back then. You know, the Methodists had taken this offering till there wasn't any more. This is another sort we did in the Civic Center. We had a 3-day sort. I mean, the amount and volume of bags and boxes is insane. And then I happened to pick that time to fall in the ice and break a couple ribs, so I sat in a chair and watched for one day, and then I couldn't even do that.
We had 110 volunteers.
Yeah, in that
It
3 days.
amazing.
Yep. All right, so this is a Quonset on the property where the ministry is now, and this is a sign we put on Main Street. There was a boulevard on Main Street, and you could put signs up there, and so that's where that did. And this is the piles that ended up in there. The piles just kept coming. Now this, we ended up finish insulating it because it wasn't, and now you can see in the back there's a furnace, and we had new lights put in and some fans, and so we have the store, which this is the inside of the store, which is a different building, a 40 by 60. That's what the store was like. That's how it started. We started out renting that building, and we had the camper parked there, and so we worked on the inside and kept working on it, and that's what it looked like when we left. We had it painted and changed doors and added windows and did all kinds of stuff, and you could have 30 to 40 cars there on any given day when we were open. That's before painting. And so we had the thrift store, and then once a month we'd do a gathering place where we'd do a meal and devotional, and we'd invite people that came through the thrift store, trying to make a connection and build friendships and stuff. And Kathy, any of these that you wanted to chip in on, these are families that...
What caused all
Yes, the oil field. Oh, I didn't even say where it was really, did I? Watford City, the oil field, 2013. Chaos. I said it was like the gold rush, except instead of horses and wagons, it was semis and pickups.
Some of these people, we have been away from there since 2019. So some of these people were with us forever. We happened to go back last year.
Yeah, last
Yeah.
October.
And they're doing a coat giveaway. So we got to visit a lot of friends.
Yep, a lot of people.
That
we
we've
knew.
maintained connection with.
And then we'd have groups that would come up and help us sort. And some of these people, we were their grandparents. They
Yeah.
just kind of adopted
Yeah.
us because it was a safe place to come and to talk, and we would really try and get involved and visit with these people. And then our kids came up, and on one of our giveaways, and while the parents were shopping, they did a VBS for the kids. This is Kathy's sister, who lives in a group home in Fargo, that loved to come up and go through clothes and stuff. And she'd tuck as many away in a bag somewhere she could take home with her.
Yes, she loved to work thrift stores. And so there was a Hispanic woman, her name was Maria, and those two bonded. You know, she couldn't speak Spanish, but she did a lot of smiling and,
Yeah,
you know,
they'd smile at each
and
other.
Maria, of course, she knew English, but they were like two peas in the pod. It was just amazing that God got them together, and they were just
Yep.
so much fun to watch.
The reason there's a picture of this little gal, this is in the store. Her mother brought her in, and she'd heard about our store and what we were doing, and so she saved up all the change and money she could get, and she brought it in. She wanted to make an offering.
It's like the widow's mite.
Yeah. So this is the group that came up from Sisseton to help with the VBS. That's our youngest granddaughter. On the floor, looks like she's crying and kicking her legs. And this is when we're doing a sort. We had the Johnson Corners, where Pastor Adrian was. The kids would come in at given times. We'd set up a date, and they'd come in and help sort things. Then at Christmas, we'd do a toy mall, and the newspaper is always good to talk about that. And we'd have like 100 to 120 kids plus adults. And we do Christmas music, and we do snacks. The first year we did a meal. That was way too big of a deal. And then we have all brand new presents there, and the kids would get a ticket when they come in, and then they get to come up and pick out a present of their own choosing, and they'd be pretty happy. This is some of the stuff, and then here's all the stuff they're carrying out afterwards. And then we do a coat giveaway. We didn't have room to do anything, so we went to the grocery store parking lot.
This was before we had the building.
Yeah, before the building. And then we set up the camper and all these racks and hanging lights, and then put signs up. And that was it. The first year we gave away 400 coats. It was crazy. This is a group that we gave some coats to, and they just came and came and came. This is miscellaneous. I'm not quite sure what miscellaneous is, but so we did garage church for a while. This is from the house where we lived, looking out over the city, and just say, God, you've given this place to us to love and minister however we possibly can. Look at that. That wasn't so bad.
No, you did good.
Huh? And man, I got like 3 minutes. I can get to the last page. Do you have anything more you want to say?
Well, I'm just going to share one thing about peace. Back in 2019, I had been diagnosed with breast cancer. And so it was just a flurry of everything that happened. Kind of crazy, not expecting it, just expecting everything to go wonderfully well, but it didn't. And I was there having an ultrasound done, and they said, well, we're going to have to do a biopsy. They did the biopsy, and when the report came back, it was not a good report. And so right there, I had a choice. I was either going to be fearful, or what I did was I took a few breaths, and I just shut my eyes, and I said, okay, God, you're with me. You are going to walk me through this. And through the whole process, I did not have an ounce of fear. It was like I was blanketed with peace. And it went back to my dad just drilled this verse into me because he had it in his spirit. Isaiah 41:13, for I, the Lord your God, hold your right hand. I am the Lord who says to you, fear not, I will help you. So actually, when I was having radiation treatments, I went in with this, okay, this is a place of life. Many people think, they kind of attribute it to death. And of course, that people have different experiences with cancer. But my experience was one that just, my faith soared, because it was just so evident that God's peace was in my life. And actually, when I was on the radiation, or having the radiation done, I would just lay there and I would pray. I would pray for the people that would be, that went before me, the people that came after me, and I'd go through the lobby and I'd visit with people, and they increased my faith, because some of them, they've had cancer 5 to 8 different times. And they just say, we take one day at a time. And I thought, wow. And so that's a short version of my testimony. At times, at a time, when we were getting ready to turn the ministry over to people, having a house closing date of April 15th, which I told them that's not going to work. My surgery was on April 1st, and so they bumped it to May 15th. But it was just neat, because I know that the Lord went before me. He had me surrounded. And I'm just very, very thankful. And we can all be encouraged that God has our hand. And he tells us to fear not. And in this day and age that we're living in, turn that fear into peace. Exchange it for peace.
Yep.
And there's a whole lot more.
Yeah. So two quick things kind of in closing, and then we'll sing a song. Having a can-do attitude is not a motivational concept, but a biblical truth. It's not something, you could do, no. Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ because it gives me strength. In Proverbs, it talks about doing good to those who need help and trusting in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on your own understanding. And if there's one thing we've learned...
Yeah, they got the banner right there.
Yeah, trust in the Lord.
Yeah.
So what we're doing now, if you have a heart to minister and be used of God, you do it wherever you are. It's in you. I mean, it has to be part of your heart and your love for people, and say, God, use me. So we both drive part-time for the community transit. So we drive people to doctor's appointments in Fargo, Sioux Falls, Watertown, Aberdeen. And then we get to talk to them. And some we get to pray with, and some not. And we help out at the church, and we're helping raise our grandkids. And God has been good, and we still love them, and say, hey, there's more to do. And that's the way it is for all of us. I mean, really, it's being available and saying, hey, God, use me. Because it's Jesus, it's Jesus' power through us. We just need to be the willing vessels. And she's walking away saying, it's time to sing. All right, do we stand up on the last song? All right, stand up. This is close to the end. 'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus. I think you can see how that fits in. 'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take him at his word, just to rest upon his promise, just to know, thus saith the Lord. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I proved him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. Oh, how sweet to trust in Jesus, just to trust his cleansing blood, just in simple faith to plunge me 'neath the healing, cleansing flood. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I proved him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. Yes, 'tis sweet to trust in Jesus, just from sin and self to cease, just from Jesus simply taking life and rest and joy and peace. Verse 4, I'm so glad I learned to trust thee. Precious Jesus, Savior, friend, and I know that thou art with me, will be with me to the end. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I proved him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. Trusting Jesus, amen. I was just thinking, because that's the way my mind goes, that was the Reader's Digest version, 48 and a half years and 32 minutes. So, you know. All right, God bless you. Is that it? We're good to go? All right, have a great Sunday and a great week.